Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we are back with another tipping video. Haven't done one of these in a few weeks, so I'm just going to go over quickly how I went in the previous rounds. The last time I did a tipping video was round 4. That week I got 7 out of 9. It was my first actual good week of tipping. Because the 3 previous weeks before that I'd gotten 4, 4 and 4 again, so this was my first week getting above 4 tips. The next round was even better. I got 8 out of 9. What was the one I got? That's right, yeah, the one I got wrong, that was the gather round. Melbourne lost to Essendon. No one really tipped that, so can't be too mad at that one. Yeah, I tipped all the other games correctly. It was a fairly easy round to tip, I think, but still. And then I followed that 8 out of 9 up with another 8 out of 9. Again, a fairly simple round to tip. I got Carlton beat St Kilda wrong. Yeah, other than that, it was all smooth sailing there. And round 7, it could have been a really good round, potentially. But, well, I started off getting the first one wrong. St Kilda beat Port Adelaide. My best tip of the round, and probably of the season, was I tipped GWS to beat us. Absolutely no one tipped GWS, which, to be honest, I don't really understand why. We still had a ton of injuries for this game. Like, I think I saw on AFL tipping 7% of all people had tipped GWS, and I just decided to. I could have just gone with my team like everyone else did, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to use my head, not my heart. And I tipped GWS, I got it right. On AFL tipping, I accidentally tipped Port Adelaide too, so I was like, at that point in the round, on track for 9 out of 9. I got Richmond wrong, and I got Adelaide wrong. It was another typical Adelaide performance of they should have put the game to bed at quarter time. If they had a kick straight in front of goal, they would have won that game easily, but they didn't. And I only got 6 out of 9 and 7 out of 9 on AFL tipping. But it was still a fairly good round. Look, it was a pretty tough round to tip, and if Adelaide had just kicked straight, man, that would have been such a good tip. But now let's move on to my round 8 tips. So here we go, starting things off with the Friday night matchup. Carlton taking on Brisbane at the Docklands. And this should be a very good contest. I think this is a real test for both teams. Carlton, other than maybe that game against Geelong, but that was when Geelong were a bit down on form, they haven't really beaten a really top quality side. And Brisbane, they don't perform too well in Melbourne, generally. So I think this is a good test for them up against what we think is quality opposition. So a real test for both teams, I think. I'm going to go with Brisbane to win this one. I think they've really started to click into gear. They've won their last few matches like quite comfortably. They're so far the only team to have beaten Collingwood as well. That was at the Gabba, but still that is an impressive feat. So I'm going to go Brisbane by 16 points. Absolute thrilling matchup this should be. 16th versus 18th on the ladder. Yeah, both these teams had a shocking start. Richmond, they've really fallen off a cliff, haven't they? Everyone was tipping them top 4, top 8. Everyone was saying, including myself, really, that they were going to improve with the new recruits. But those new recruits that they got, they haven't really done a whole lot, have they? Taranto's been, from what I've seen, he's been more or less just a stat patter. He's been fairly good the last couple of weeks, but for the most part, he's just kind of, yeah, he gets the disposals, he gets the fantasy points, he gets the stats, but he's not a damaging ball user. he seemed to have improved that part of his game a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but and Hopper, I haven't really seen him do a whole lot, but maybe that's just because Richmond as a team are underperforming. It's not entirely their fault, obviously. I still think they should beat West Coast, who I've heard that they might have to pick all 26 remaining players, AFL listed players, to fill their 26-man squad. So yeah, they're in a world of trouble with their injuries. Something's not quite right with their training loads, because to be hit this badly with injuries 2 years in a row, there's something not right. It can't be all just bad luck. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I think surely they got to win this one. I'm gonna go for them to win it quite comfortably, 46 points. Geelong versus Adelaide at the Cattery. Cardinia Park, I think you can never go against Geelong. Adelaide, well, if they had have beaten Collingwood last week, then I'd have to give serious consideration for them to tip this game. And I mean, they looked very impressive. They did, Adelaide. They for particularly in the first half, they were moving the ball with ease. They were shutting Collingwood's ball movement down with ease. They just couldn't put it on the scoreboard. They just kept on kicking behinds. It was behind after behind. Eventually, Collingwood got back in the game. It should have been a much bigger margin, and one that Collingwood probably wouldn't have been able to mount, but Adelaide let them back in the game, and they lost by a point. Yeah, at Cardinia Park, I think Adelaide should take it up to them, but I'm gonna tip Geelong in this one by 13 points. Gold Coast taking on Melbourne now. Gold Coast seem to have run into a little bit of form as of late. Granted, they beat the current two of currently on the ladder. Richmond are still 16th, and North Melbourne are 15th. That's who they've beaten in the last couple of weeks. So not the best opposition, but they are wins nonetheless, and any win is a good win. In the eyes of Gold Coast, they don't win too many games. I'm going to have to tip Melbourne in this one. Absolutely destroyed North Melbourne last week. Unlucky not to win by 100 points. It looked like it was going to certainly be the case, but then North Melbourne just kicked a few junk time goals late in that game. Yeah, I'll tip Melbourne by 25. Gold Coast seem to have improved a little bit. Ben King's back in form. Was a bit shaky to start off the year, but he's kicked 9 goals in the last 2 weeks. But I think Melbourne should still be too good. GWS taking on the Bulldogs now. A bit of a rivalry matchup. Adam Kingsley's promised it to be a fiery game, he says. So maybe is it the return of a rivalry? Because I feel like in the last couple of years, this GWS Bulldogs rivalries, it's dimmed a little bit. I wouldn't mind seeing it fire up again, because that was those contests back from like 2016 to 2020. They were very intriguing contests every time. I think for this game, I'll tip the Bulldogs. GWS obviously beat Sydney. Currently, without injuries, I don't really rate us that much. The Bulldogs, they seem to be back in a bit of form. They only beat Hawthorne. They struggled for about 3 quarters to beat Hawthorne, but they kicked away in the end. So this could be an interesting match. I'm going to go... I'll go for it to be a really close one, actually. I'm going to go the Bulldogs by just a mere 4 points. Should be a good game. Hopefully it lives up to my expectations. Fremantle taking on Hawthorne now. Who would have expected Fremantle to be 14th at this stage of the year? I tipped them to go 6-0. That didn't quite pan out the way I hoped it would, and the way Fremantle fans would have hoped it would. surely they beat Hawthorne at Optus Stadium this week. Surely. If they don't, then wow, that's I don't know what to say. Hawthorne, they seem to be actually competitive now, unlike those first few weeks they got where they were just getting smashed. They suffered 59 point, 81 point, and 82 point losses in the first 4 rounds, and they look destined for the wooden spoon. But now they haven't won any more games since then, but they are at least competing week in, week out. And I expect them to take it up to Fremantle, but surely the home crowd gets Fremantle over the line. Adelaide taking on, not Adelaide, sorry, Port Adelaide taking on Essendon. Port Adelaide, they are back. They had a brilliant round 1 win, then they went a bit shaky, but now they're back, and they've won the last 4, and they look very impressive. Essendon, on the other hand, they've lost the last couple. Still looked pretty good, but I'm going to have to tip them to lose this one. I think Port Adelaide at home, that's just, with the form they're in, they should get a big crowd in, and Essendon, I just can't see them beating Port Adelaide at home. So yeah, Port Adelaide, I'll go by 21 points. Well, at the start of the year, this was a much anticipated game. Now, I'm not quite so sure with the form Sydney have shown. Yeah, so we've still got a few injuries for this game. The Swans, we're very light on our defensive stocks still. Should have Robbie Fox coming back, have Tom McCartan as our only real key defender. Luckily, that's not an area where Collingwood are too strong, the key forwards, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Not as much as it was against Geelong when we had Aaron Francis as our only key defender. But yeah, I just can't see us beating Collingwood with the way they're going right now, and I'm going to tip this to be a bit of a smashing. Actually, I'm going to go Collingwood by 51 points. Hopefully, we put up a better effort than that, but I can't see us getting anywhere near Collingwood right now. Final game of the round: North Melbourne taking on St Kilda. St Kilda, they lost last round. I can't see them losing against North Melbourne. If they lose to North Melbourne, then well, that would be just shocking. North Melbourne, they look absolutely garbage last round. They conceded 50 points in the first quarter. Their effort was really just embarrassing. It looked like they weren't even trying. Should have really lost by 100 points, and I think St Kilda will respond to their loss and win this one by 73 points. And that'll be the end of round 8. So the only potentially roughie I've gone with is the Brisbane Lions to beat Carlton. That's a bit of a 50-50 game, so I'm not really sure if you can consider that too much of an upset. But yeah, I've gone with a fairly basic round of tipping. The ladder, Richmond still in the bottom 4, Fremantle still stuck on 14th. This part of the ladder hasn't really changed too much. The Western Bulldogs jump into the top 8, Adelaide fall out. Geelong continue their gradual rise up the ladder. The top 4 looks more or less the same, with all the same teams in there: Collingwood, St Kilda, Melbourne, Brisbane, Port just outside that group. And with that all being said, I hope you did enjoy this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.